They are dying on that day to get rid of MAGA, to get rid of America First, to get rid of Trump. They are waiting, and I'm speaking now of our own party. Mm-hmm. They are waiting for that door to shut, and they're hoping we snap back to the way it always was.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm running. That's exactly why I'm running, because Coach is the strongest voice in the United States Senate for the president. He was the first senator to endorse Donald J. Trump. He has carried the MAGA agenda in the Senate, even when it was dramatically unpopular. Mm-hmm. And Alabama just can't let anybody take his place.
Howdy, everyone, and welcome back to Moment of Truth, the podcast of American Moment. My name is Nick Solheim. I'm the CEO of American Moment, and we had a fantastic guest, as we always do, in the studio today. But before we get to it, we are going to do a little ad break here for our great friends at Hillsdale College. Are you a staffer on Capitol Hill, or maybe in the administration, or in another job in Washington, D.C., but you want to continue your graduate education? Well, Hillsdale College has the solution. They're offering a part-time Master of Arts in Government program right here in Washington, D.C. They work with you on your busy schedule with evening and weekend classes and is conveniently located on Capitol Hill. All accepted students receive scholarships and many graduate within the first 3 years. I personally know many members of our American Moment Network who have loved this program and who have immensely benefited from it. And so I would really encourage you to check it out. If I'd graduated from university, I would do it myself. So to learn more, you can visit dc.hillsdale.edu and apply by November 1st to start classes this spring, or apply by May 15th to start in fall of 2026. And thank you to Hillsdale College for sponsoring this episode of the Moment of Truth podcast. Now, back to our guest. I was very honored to have a very good friend of mine, Morgan Murphy, who recently left the administration where he was working for General Kellogg, helping the president put a stop to this war in Ukraine, and is now running for United States Senate in the great state of Alabama. Morgan, I met earlier this year. I was instantly impressed by him. He's a great man. Most of the time we hang out, we spend talking about Southern living, good cooking. He forgot to mention this during the podcast, but he collects vintage cars. So we've spent a lot of time talking about that. He's a wonderful man. I'm a huge fan of his, and also used to work for Coach Tuberville, the great member of the Senate, which I should try to get him on this podcast before he leaves the Senate, actually, because huge fan of his in the work that he's done over there in the Senate. So very glad to have Morgan on today. It should be a very engaging episode. We went a little longer than usual because, again, he has so many cool stories from his very interesting life. So we will go now to Mr. Morgan Murphy. Morgan, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Glad to be here, Nick.
So I met you earlier this year. I think you have one of the most fascinating stories of anybody that I've heard in DC, and you've recently announced a bid for Senate in Alabama. I think a lot of the young people that come through our programming, who are maybe currently working on the Hill or in the administration, would relish to hear how they could one day become somebody like Morgan Murphy. So tell us the story. How'd you end up here?
Well, I started my career in journalism. So I was the editor of my school newspaper, the Hilltop News in Birmingham, Alabama, at Birmingham Southern College. And I got an internship at the New York Post. That was my first national byline. It was the paper that Alexander Hamilton founded. So it's the nation's oldest newspaper.
Yeah.
And went to work there and worked in journalism most of my career. So I went from the Post to Forbes magazine, where I was a reporter covering small business. It's where I interviewed Donald Trump for the first time, actually.
When was that?
Gosh, like 98. We would call him when one of the stories was really boring. If you were writing a really dry story on something, you'd call Donald Trump because he would just give you this unbelievably great quote, and it would make the story lively.
What was the story about?
I don't even remember.
Oh, okay.
I think it was the best advice your mother ever gave you, something crazy like that. And, I've been rooting around. This is back in the day when you had to have those little miniature tape cassettes, and I have the tape. I just can't find a player for it that still works. So I need to look that up. But I worked at Vanity Fair under Graydon Carter, and that was I was an intern there. And young people can't imagine this now, but media had so much money. I mean, we probably spent more on champagne than that magazine spends an entire year today.
Really?
Oh, yeah. No, it was just unbelievable. We paid Annie Leibovitz, the photographer, $400,000 to shoot just one cover. I mean, it was...
Where did they get all that money?
Well, it's all gone down the rabbit hole today of, Facebook and Instagram. And, it's being sucked into other places. But back in the day, it was really concentrated in traditional print media, which is why the mainline media is so awful today, because they've run out of money. In 2000, I moved back to my hometown of Birmingham, Alabama, to be the executive editor of Southern Living. I was the travel editor and food critic for the magazine, which was like a gravy train with biscuit wheels. It was good, a good time. A lot of people say, Morgan, like, why did you leave that life? Like, that's what I want to retire and do, is travel around and eat. Why'd you leave that? Which I'll get to in a minute. But at Southern Living, we covered the South. So we're from Maryland all the way out to the East End, West End of Texas.
Yeah.
And
we have a lot of Yankees that listen to this podcast.
Southern impaired people is what we call you.
But it is, Southern Living is an institution. Like, I do not know if I've ever been in a Southern home, and my wife is from the South, that did not have a copy of Southern Living somewhere.
What's weird about Southern Living is it's owned by the world's largest, or at least it was when I was there, the world's largest media conglomerate, Time Warner. And it was the second largest magazine at Time Warner. So People was first, Southern Living was second.
Wow. Sports
Illustrated a distant third. The free cash flow of Southern Living the year I left was $85 million. It was hugely profitable. Hugely profitable magazine. And I wrote 4 books for them, restaurant cookbooks, which I loved because, when you interview a restaurant, it's really small business. And it's generally a family business. And a lot of times you'll meet every member of the family in the family working in the business. And it's good for the soul. And so I went around the South and talked to all these business owners and loved that part of my life and my job. Concurrently, though, working in media, in 1999, I joined the U.S. Navy. And I just felt both my grandfathers had served in the European theater in World War II. And I heard their stories when I was a boy on their knee, and always admired them and admired that service, and felt like it was something I needed to do. So I joined the Navy. Had no idea that September 11th would happen, and it did. Ended up going to Afghanistan in 2010 and 2011. And that's really when I'd paid attention to politics, but that's when I really started thinking, what's happening in Washington is very much affecting my life. And I saw politics up close and really dirty in Afghanistan, because I was working with 40 generals. I briefed 40 generals every morning, the White House, NATO, 3 ambassadors. I was 38 years old and no pressure. Just briefing all these folks.
Yeah.
And it was tough. But it was an incredible experience. But I saw at that time we were spending $2 billion a week in Afghanistan. And we were building, and the war was at that point 9 years old, and we were building power plants and roads and infrastructure and cell phone towers and schools, and giving every policeman a Ford Ranger, and just doing all the things that, we did in our endless wars. And I looked around and said, this is just stupid. What are we doing? The pièce de résistance on that was I was in Bamiyan province, remember where they blew up the Buddhas?
Yeah.
And I'm on this beautiful 4-lane blacktop highway that's nicer than anything we have in Alabama, Mississippi. Stunning. Not a soul on it for as far as the eye could see. But there was a guy walking his donkey down the side of the road. And I asked my translator, like, why isn't he on the road? Why is he on the side of the road? And my translator says, the Laura Bush Highway is too nice. And I was like, what was that again? Did you say the Laura Bush Highway? And it was the Laura Bush Highway.
Wow.
In the middle of BFE, Afghanistan. And I just said, this is the biggest boondoggle I have ever seen. And it just made me sick inside. And that's when I became, I call myself a recovering neocon. Mm-hmm. That is the exact moment, precise moment that I said, we've got to stop this business of running around the world trying to find Thomas Jefferson in Beijing, trying to find, John Adams and the Hindu Kush Mountains. We cannot force people into our style of government. Mm-hmm. We thought we could. And when I got home, I did a lot of missions outside the wire, as we say in Afghanistan. And when your life is in danger, and so many soldiers have this when they come home, your head's on a swivel everywhere you look. In traffic, I still don't get right up on somebody's bumper. I always leave a little space to escape just because that was a necessity there in Afghanistan. But when I got home, I was just hyper attuned to what was going on in our culture. And this was the Obama years, right? It was the tail end of his, the middle of his presidency, right? He was about to get reelected. And I just, pillars of my culture growing up were crumbling that I never thought would crumble. I was a Boy Scout. My dad was an Eagle Scout. And you've seen what's happened to Scouting. They've lost half their membership in the past 15 years. They took the boy out of Scouting. They went bankrupt in 2020. They got away from their first principles. And I never thought I'd see that organization do that. I mean, I loved being a scout myself, and there are a lot of great scouts and scout troops out there still. But I never thought I'd see the institution fall like that. I had a church growing up. I was a member of it my entire life. I was baptized there. My parents were married there. My son was baptized there. 4 generations of my family attended that church, and the head pastor preached that Jesus Christ was a racist. And, my whole family said, check, please. We got to go. And since that time, I've talked to people about this, and they've said, I heard that same sermon about the Canaanite woman at the well. Yeah, it was about the Canaanite woman at the well that Jesus called a little dog. And the pastor described that as racist. You called the only, you've reached peak woke when you call the only perfect person that's ever walked the earth a racist.
Yeah.
But I never thought I'd see that church fall like that. It was it had $100 million endowment, a gorgeous facility. It was an incredible place, but it lost its way. And that just kept happening. And I noticed it happening with my beloved Navy. I've been a member of the Navy for 26 years. And when I joined the United States Navy in 1999, we were the strongest maritime force in the history of the world. We could take anybody down. There was no other Navy on earth that could compete with us. And then we got fat and rusty. The sailors got fat. The ships got rusty. Congress has mandated that we have to have 350 ships. Today we have 285. And we just became complacent. And we worried more about people's pronouns than we worried about our lethality. And I sat there watching all of this from my kitchen table in Birmingham, Alabama, cussing out the Wall Street Journal every morning, mm-hmm. right? And said, if conservatives don't go to Washington, D.C., and by our nature, conservatives don't like being here.
Yeah.
It's not an easy city to live in as a conservative. I mean, 93.5% of the city is Democrat. The other 6% is communist. I mean, it's a rough town. And we don't like being part of the permanent DC state. So the rule in Democrats, they just come up here and they stay. And when they fall out of power, they go to a think tank or they go to a Ivy League school and they become a fellow or an associate professor and they just stay. And conservatives don't do that by and large. But I said to myself, if I don't go up there, we're not going to have a country. That's the last pillar in my life that I couldn't imagine crumbling. And I realized I needed to fight for it. So I came up here at the tail end of the first Trump administration and worked for the Secretary of Defense. I became the press secretary for the Secretary of Defense, which was at first Dr. Esper, and then it became Christopher Miller, who's a terrific man. And that was during, if you think back, during COVID and BLM and, of course, January 6th. And I stayed through to the very end with the president until January 20th. And I walked out the door with the Secretary of Defense on January 20th, 2021. And that week went to go work for the new senator from the great state of Alabama, Tommy Tuberville.
Yeah.
Coach was new to Washington, so was I. I didn't know squat about politics, right? And I was going to be a staffer on the Hill at the ripe age of 48, right?
Yeah.
So I was, if you want to feel young, hang out with senators,
right?
If you want to feel old, hang out with a bunch of Senate staffers, because I was by far in the office. Coach was. He asked us to call him Coach. He said, when somebody says Senator, 99 heads turn around, but when somebody says Coach, I know who they're talking to, so we all called him Coach.
Yeah.
But when, Coach was the oldest, obviously on the staff, and then I was second. So we talked a lot, and I was his national security advisor, which was a great honor. But if you think back when, this is 2021, hugely unpopular time to be a MAGA Republican. Like probably bad time to be a Republican, period.
Yeah.
The Republican Party was probably at its lowest ebb since 1930. But to be a MAGA Republican was to be hated by both the Democrats and the traditional Republicans. So going to the office was fun. It was rough. We went by 25,000 National Guardsmen, to get into the Senate every day, and we started fighting the Biden administration, and they came out strong and they came out tough immediately. And Coach, to his great credit, just wasn't going to take any bunk off of him. So fought with Coach there for 3 years. Then I joined America First Policy Institute as a senior fellow, wrote for the Daily Caller. I tapped on my media background. If you can write well, if you can communicate well, you can go far in Washington, I think. And so I encourage young people to write. And it's not popular right now. It's much better to go on a podcast, right? But I encourage young people to write because it clarifies your thoughts. And then I joined the Trump administration, the second Trump administration. I worked for General Kellogg. And 2 weeks ago, I left the White House and announced my candidacy for my old boss's seat.
Yeah.
So Tommy Tuberville is going to go be the next governor of the great state of Alabama. He's measuring the drapes in the governor's mansion because I said right now he's running unopposed. I think that'll probably remain that way.
Yeah.
And I'm throwing my hat in the ring for his seat.
Yeah. How did you end up working for the then, I guess back then we called it the Secretary of Defense?
Yes. Now it's the Secretary of War.
Yeah. But I'm sure there are people that are wondering, like, how does a guy from Birmingham, Alabama,
some Huckleberry do that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this has been my whole life. People have often asked me that. Like, it doesn't matter the job. How'd you get to work for Vanity Fair? How'd you interview Donald Trump when you were at Forbes? Put yourself out there. That's what I did. I got to the Pentagon. I was ostensibly called up to the Pentagon to, what was I called up to do? It was the 80th anniversary of World War II. Mm-hmm. So they needed some help in the Office of the Secretary of Defense to work on that.
Did they call you up on like
orders?
Active orders?
Yeah. They called me up on active orders. And then it was because it was COVID. So they were pulling me up on those orders. And then because it was COVID, before I even reported to Washington, I flew up on an American flight. I remember I was the only person on the plane.
Wow.
But before I even got there, COVID broke out. So then they needed me for COVID. When I got there, I'd been there 3 days. They said, do you know anything about social media? And I said, yes. I knew how to turn on Facebook. So yes.
Turn on Facebook.
I know. I did not refer to it, Nick, as the Facebook, which really dates people.
That's a step above.
Yeah. That's a step below, I think. But I said, sure. And they said, well, we're putting you in charge of social media for the DOD. So I ran all of the social media accounts for DOD.
Yeah.
I did that for probably 6 weeks. And Alyssa Farah, who you will now know is on The View, she was the press secretary for the Secretary of Defense. And she got pulled up to be the assistant secretary, press secretary at the White House. And so her slot opened up and they pulled me in there.
Wow.
And so I began really as the traveling press secretary for Dr. Esper.
Yeah.
And then when he was fired by Trump, Chris Miller came in with Kash Patel, and we really hit it off. Chris and I are about the same age, so we had a lot in common, but I became one of his principal advisors. And I guess the message there for staffers is just do a good job, whatever you're set, just whatever you're put in front of, just put your back into it and do it. And don't worry about the next job. A lot of people here are always worried about their next job. Where am I going to go? How's it going to work out? There's a lot of anxiety in Washington, D.C. But I've always just said, just do a great job where you are, and talent rises. They'll find you.
Yeah, and it'll be from where you least expect.
That's right. It totally. I did not expect to be a food critic and then be advising the Secretary of Defense. It is surreal.
Very bizarre career.
It's a bizarre career, but there's a lot of commonality. It's basically communication,
right?
And that's what a job of a senator does, right? A senator is represents the people of their state, and they communicate great ideas. And so if you can convey a good idea, you can be an effective senator.
Yeah.
There are some introverts, I guess, that go into politics. I've met them. I can name their names, but they don't make effective senators because they can't convey ideas.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. And one of the things that, really put Coach Tuberville on the map was, his move to hold on a lot of these military promotions, which I think made him very popular outside of the Senate and very unpopular inside of the Senate is kind of my read on it.
That's fair.
And we actually did, I think, 1 or 2 podcast interviews about it with people who were experts on kind of Senate procedure and that sort of thing at the time. But can you tell us a little bit more about why y'all did that and how it all came together?
So after Roe v. Wade was overturned, the Biden administration, Biden himself said, we're going to look at every part of the interagency is going to look how to fix this, right? They wanted to fix it by executive action.
Yep.
Which automatically signaled to me that it's completely unconstitutional. The executive branch does not write law. They follow it and enforce it. But he immediately said, I've directed the entire interagency to look how to supplement women's reproductive rights, right? And so cryptically, Lloyd Austin said, well, abortion is a readiness issue. Reproductive health care is a readiness issue, which, having served in the military for 26 years, perked my ears up. Because when the military talks about a readiness issue, it's usually something very serious. We're talking about ammunition shortage. We're talking about personnel shortage. We're talking about, overstretched resources in some way. It's usually applied to our ability to project power. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, what the heck you mean it's a readiness issue? What are you talking about? How many abortions does the Pentagon perform a year or fund a year? And at that time, it was 12. Roughly, because the Pentagon had, the standard policy of only subsidizing abortion when it came to rape, incest, life of the mother. Mm-hmm. That was it. And so it was worked out on average to 12. And he kept saying readiness issue. And remember, we were anticipating a red wave that year. And Democrats saw abortion as a lifeline for them politically. And they made it a political hot topic. And what he eventually did, and I pressed the Pentagon on this. So again, as a staffer, I would encourage staffers out there listening, when your ears perk up, really dig. So we began digging and got the Pentagon ledge affairs on the line and asked them hard questions. And they said, well, eventually they revealed to us that they were going to pay. They could not legally pay for abortions, right? Because of the Hyde Amendment. They couldn't do that. Not the Hyde Amendment, the Hatch Act.
Yeah.
No, the Hyde Amendment.
Yeah.
I'm getting all my H amendments mixed up.
No, it was the Hyde Amendment.
It's the Hyde Amendment. And I'm more concerned with the Hatch Act right now as a former staffer running for office, right? So I replaced one for the other. But the Hyde Amendment prohibited them from directly paying for abortions. So what they did was they said, we will fly any service member or their dependent who wants an abortion. We'll give them 30 days off, additional leave, or maybe it was 15 days. It was a lot of additional leave. And then we will fly them to any one of the 7 states that perform unlimited abortion on demand. Mm-hmm. So it was basically an open spigot to the taxpayer pocketbook to pay for unlimited abortions up to 9 months.
But even if you take what they're saying at face value, which is this is a readiness issue, surely taking thousands of service members or their spouses, like giving them those days off, doesn't that create more of a readiness issue?
Well, I mean, the readiness issue, they never could answer. And we asked them specifically, Coach wrote a letter. The head of Armed Services, the minority member of Armed Services, wrote a letter, which every member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Republican member, signed to Lloyd Austin saying, how exactly is this a readiness issue? And he never answered. Never answered. And that opened my eyes. Like, how could it be that a senator on the oversight committee just doesn't get answers?
Yep.
And Lloyd Austin and Coach had been together at Auburn.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So Lloyd Austin was on the board of Auburn. Coach was obviously the coach of Auburn. And I had just come out of the Secretary of Defense's office. And so I knew the scheduler. I called her up and said, hey, Coach would like to meet with, this is before any of this came up. Coach would like to meet with him. No. Coach actually voted for him. You know, he believed the president has the right to pick his cabinet. And people say, oh, Coach is the most extreme right-wing member of, the Republican Party in the Senate. But here he is trying to be convivial, trying to give the president the cabinet he wants, trying to meet with the Secretary of Defense, wouldn't even meet with him.
Wow.
Which was typical. That's what Biden did. That's how they behaved towards Republicans and also towards all their adversaries. Stupid, in my opinion. But refused to meet with Coach. Then when the abortion issue came up, we wrote him multiple letters, called him, tried to schedule meetings, refused to meet or even talk about it. Refused to answer not just Coach, but every Republican member of Senate Armed Services, the Oversight Committee of the DOD, just didn't feel any compunction to talk to their fellow Americans and try to explain their policy. They couldn't explain their policy. So eventually you get to the point where you're just like, well, we've tried to talk to you, tried to meet with you. We've sent letters. We've protested you. And Coach sent him a letter and it said, if you go forward, we're hearing this is the policy you're going to put forward. If you put this policy forward of unlimited abortion on demand at the taxpayer's expense, I will hold up every admiral and every general in the United States military. I will hold their promotions. Now, that doesn't mean they don't get paid. It doesn't mean that they can't perform their duties. It just means they don't get promoted. Now, the poorest person on that list made $200 and some odd thousand a year, right? So it was a beautiful thing to watch Elizabeth Warren go down to the Senate floor and say, "Oh, these crocodile tears, these poor gentlemen, they don't have grocery money." She actually said they don't have grocery money. Okay, Liz. But that's the argument that they put forward, and he didn't answer that letter either. Coach made his intent known. He said, "This is what I'm going to do." And they went forward with the policy, and Coach Tuberville went forward with his policy, and he held every general and every admiral.
And it was for was over a year.
It was
wasn't
almost. It was a long time. It was
Yeah.
a long time, and they said it was a readiness issue. They said, "Oh my gosh, the whole military is going to fall apart if we don't have these admirals and generals."
There were many Republican senators who said the same thing.
Oh no, you've hit on an interesting topic.
Yeah.
You know. So remember when I talked earlier about being lonely?
Yeah.
It was even lonelier.
Yeah.
That was a thing I think as a political outsider that shocked me the most was the resistance from our own party
Right.
behind closed doors. And the door would shut and other colleagues of Coach would say, "Oh, now Coach, I'm a little nervous about what you're doing.
Yeah.
I don't know about this." And we got that from all quarters. We got it from people here in town. We got it. And it's hard to express to you. I had a friend on the staff who was blackballed from a very prestigious club because of Coach's stance on abortion.
Wow.
It hurt. It hurt. Coach was he was under an enormous amount of pressure from all of his colleagues. It's the world's smallest country club.
Yep.
Right. And most senators quickly learned to get along with each other. And Coach just wasn't going to do that. He stood on his principles, but
That's not the way we do sports at Auburn.
No. And he just remained resolute. And no matter what people said, and they said the worst things about you. They swatted his house, death threats. I can't tell you the number of calls that came in, our poor, the interns of staffers that were manning the telephones and the emails. I mean, just the venom and vitriol that came from the public, that came from the Democrats, that came from our own party. He got it from every side. But he stood firm. He stood firm throughout.
Yeah, and there were a lot of institutions, nominally conservative institutions here in DC, a lot of Senate staff, a lot of senators themselves who attacked him. And I think their main vector of attack was like, this makes us less safe, that they can't.
They don't know the military.
Right. Why is that not true?
Because, well, first of all, we have more admirals than we have ships. And
seems bad.
Yeah,
probably.
It seems bad. We're top heavy.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of brass, and a lot of them are my friends. I was in zone to be selected as admiral, and people would call me and they'd say, "Morgan, do you think Coach could release my brother-in-law who's up for brigadier? Could you think my business partner's got a 3-star? My golfing buddy is this and that."
Yeah.
And I would say, he wouldn't release me if I were selected. He's not going to release you.
Yeah.
So it was amazing how people tried to kind of get around that. But our military, what people don't understand is we've basically cut the Army in half since the 1980s. So since the Reagan years, the Army has reduced its footprint literally by 50%. But there's the same number of generals.
Yeah.
So they've protected their own. And
as they always do.
As they do. The top does. And there's a lot of fat there that could be trimmed. There's also a lot of redundancy in the military, and they were still doing the jobs. They just weren't being promoted. So, in fact, the Government Accountability Office said it did a study at the behest of the Democrats, said, let's do a study on whether evil, hateful Coach Tuberville's holds are hurting military readiness. And so they did, and they said, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the long-awaited.
And then I'm sure it was buried. Like, please don't.
Oh
share
yeah, that got buried deep dark in some library,
Yeah.
under the Capitol.
Yeah.
But yeah, it didn't hurt readiness at all, and it's so hypocritical. And if you go back, they said, "Oh, this is unprecedented." Tammy Duckworth said, "Oh, it's unprecedented." I can't believe she held like hundreds, if not thousands, of military members, and lots of senators have done it, dating all the way back to George Washington. So literally in the first administration ever, the Washington administration, 2 senators from Georgia held a lighthouse officer in Georgia because they didn't like the guy. They wanted their guy. Yeah. And so they held up the promotion for some lieutenant in Savannah. Over it. And
it's very precedented, actually.
It's incredibly precedented. And and that's why the Senate gets to confirm officers. All officers, me, every other officer in the United States military is a political position. They are all confirmed by the United States Senate. And most of that's perfunctory.
Yeah.
But it is still a tradition of the government, and that's the beauty of our government. And Coach was right firmly in that tradition of standing up and saying no. And he used his authority and he used his power to stand up for something he really believed in, and that's why I admire him. And it's proof positive that the good guys can win.
Right.
He won. Day 3 of the second Trump administration, they reversed that policy. And just last month, Trump put Space Command back in Alabama. A lot of people blamed Alabama's losing Space Command on Coach Tuberville. Totally misplaced, but they blamed him nonetheless. That's politics. And we got Space Command back.
Yeah.
Thanks in no small part to Coach's efforts.
Yeah. No, that's all very interesting. I love hearing about, the way that the inside baseball all worked. Yeah. Behind the scenes.
Or inside football, as the case may be.
Inside football. There you go. So moving on to the next third rail of politics, let's talk about Ukraine.
Oh, good.
So
thanks, Nick.
Yep, you're
Appreciate
welcome.
Your campaign help.
So you went straight from working for Senator Tuberville. Sorry, Coach, I keep doing that. And to go and work for General Kellogg and helping the president resolve the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We've had a lot of conversations about Ukraine on this podcast, but I think really what I would like to hear, zeroing aside from any cool stories you may have, is why this conflict in Ukraine, how it actually affects normal people that live in states like Alabama or like I do in West Virginia. Like, how does this war actually have a negative impact on them?
On us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've said for a long time that, and this came up. So it came up when I was a national security advisor in the Senate, and I went to a lot of staff meetings, Republican staff meetings about this very subject. And there were a lot of neocons. There was an old neocon advisor, I won't say his name, but he's pretty famous here in D.C. And he came and spoke to all the Republican staffers, and they're mostly young guys, right? Young men and women. And I'm the old gray-haired guy in the back. And he talks about unlimited American power and how we can project power and how it's our duty and our rights and our, et cetera, et cetera. And we have the ability to do it, and we can do it, and we should do it. And the last time I'd seen him is when I was in Afghanistan in 2011, and he was advising General Petraeus on the surge. And I wanted to stand up because I could see all these young people being influenced by what he was saying. And they didn't have the life experience to viscerally combat that. And I wanted to stand up and say, hey, how'd that work out in Afghanistan?
Last time.
Right? Last time. I didn't. I bit my tongue.
Yeah.
But
as all good Southerners do.
We try. But I did, and Coach got a lot of that pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a lot of senators with names you would know, Republican senators, who came to him and said, we have got to back Ukraine to the hilt. There were some who said, we got to send them $30 billion today. There are others that said, we need to create a no-fly zone. There were still more Republicans who said, we need to put boots on the ground. And the door would shut, and Coach and I would talk about it. And even on our own staff, it was a split. I mean, there were staffers in the office who virulently disagreed with my stance. My stance was, there aren't American interests in Ukraine. There are no American citizens there to speak of. There are no American businesses there to speak of. There's no American territory there. And to think about what it took to pull us into World War II, we had to be attacked at Pearl Harbor before we got into World War II. Today, I just find the American posture way too trigger happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said to Coach, I passed out on behalf of this nation 266 American flags as my duty in the Navy. So when you pass an American flag to a next of kin, whether they die of old age or they're killed in combat, and I've given flags for both, it's tough. And you say on behalf of a grateful President of the United States Navy, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our deep appreciation for your loved ones' selfless sacrifice and faithful service. That is a tough speech to give. Mm-hmm. And Coach and I talked about it. If we put boots on the ground, we put a no-fly zone up, passing out those flags, to kids from Dothan, to kids from West Virginia. And is it worth that? And, some very pro-Ukraine people, I'm sure, are listening to me saying, but what about, moral duty, et cetera. But I believe at the beginning of every conflict the United States thinks about entering, the men and women who represent us in Congress have a duty to think about handing out those flags. Is it worth it to hand out that flag? Because you will. And so that's the way, because I'm a service member, and I've seen the sacrifice, and it's not just people who die in combat. Veterans have the highest suicide rate of our society. They have one of the highest divorce rates of our society. They have a lot of physical and mental baggage that they bring home. And we ask them to do, it's 1% of our population, that our entire society stands on their backs. Mm-hmm. And I just believe that in the United States Senate, we have to have somebody who thinks of them first before we go into any kind of conflict. So my stance on Ukraine is I don't believe it's worth American blood and treasure.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why when, Patrick Henry is giving this speech about give me liberty or give me death, he was talking about us, not like people living in Ukraine. Right. And this is always the you mentioned this earlier. This is always the argument. It's like, don't you feel like we have, a moral obligation to do so? Don't you think, we could use this as an opportunity to, rebuild our industrial capacity, which I think is a ludicrous argument we'll get to in a minute. But, specifically in your time working in the White House, can you speak a little bit more into like why the president cares about this so much? Like why he wants this war to come to an end?
Well, he cares about it. It wasn't his war. He didn't start it. Mm-hmm. We never would have gotten into this war had Trump been president. And Vladimir Putin himself said that, right?
Yep.
Trump has said it consistently on the campaign trail, and Putin confirmed it. Yeah. Never would have happened. So I think that's important to say. The president wants peace, and he sees the incredible amount of bloodshed going on. It is the bloodiest and deadliest war in Europe since 1945. And I was there a month ago, and I don't want anything I'm saying to be taken for a lack of compassion for the people of Ukraine. I have great compassion and enormous amount of respect for them. They are awesome fighters. They thought our CIA thought they'd be gone in 3 days, right? Mm-hmm. Also, staffers listening, take intelligence with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Like in my time in the Senate in super secret SCIFs that are really highly secure, CIA and our other intelligence agencies came and briefed us and said, Afghanistan's going to be fine for 9 months at a minimum. Okay.
Yeah.
How'd that work out 9 days later?
Yeah.
And then they came and they said, Kyiv is going to be gone in 3 days. We're going to fly Zelensky out. It's still there last time I checked.
Yeah.
And it's still there because of the bravery of the fighters in Ukraine. They're unbelievable. I have enormous respect for them. So what I'm saying is while I don't see strategic, vital national interests there that are worthy of committing American soldiers to die for, I do have great respect for them.
Yeah.
Great respect for them.
Yeah. What I really want to zero in on is this, the leader of the Republican Party, of the conservative movement, won an election on an agenda that prioritized peace over endless wars.
Yeah.
Do you think he, deserves maybe to have some members of his party in the Congress that agree with him.
Yeah.
Do you think that might be a good thing?
That is a good thing. I mean, he needs people to back him, and he needs, and there are a lot of people work. I mean, you know this, that there are a lot of people working against the president.
Yes.
In our own party.
Yes.
Many. And they are right now, they're running for cover.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all hiding under the potted palms, and they're saying, we love Trump and we're great, and MAGA this and MAGA that.
Yeah.
I say, where were you in 2021? I knew where they are. I sat behind closed doors with them. I listened to them. They were nowhere to be found. It's very popular to be a Republican right now. Suddenly we're back in control of all three branches of government, and we've got the House, and we've got the Senate, and we've got the Supreme Court and the executive branch, and it's awesome. And Trump is riding high, and his approval ratings at 52%. Everybody loves him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly.
Where were you? Right.
That's exactly right. I mean, we saw this after 2020, where there were a lot of members of the House and the Senate who very much rushed back to like, well, that was just a flash in the pan thing. So we're going to go back to the way things were before.
Oh, they're dying to get back there, Nick. They're dying to get back there. So I promise you, when we let's meet again, January 21st, 2029, sit down and they are dying on that day to get rid of MAGA, to get rid of America First, to get rid of Trump. They are waiting. And I'm speaking now of our own party. Mm-hmm. They are waiting for that door to shut, and they're hoping we snap back to the way it always was.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm running. That's exactly why I'm running, because Coach is the strongest voice in the United States Senate for the president. He was the first senator to endorse Donald J. Trump. He has carried the MAGA agenda in the Senate, even when it was dramatically unpopular. Mm-hmm. And Alabama just can't let anybody take his place.
Was he the first to endorse him in 20 or 24?
He endorsed him in 20. He was the first to endorse him in 24.
Okay.
And again, the door is shut, and a lot of people said, "Oh, what about DeSantis? What about what are you, Coach? You're getting out there really early."
Yeah, the reason that I was asking that question is it was kind of funny. Alabama may be the center of the MAGA movement here, because Sessions was the first senator to endorse him in I think it was in 15 he endorsed him or something like that. So do you view, Alabama as a particularly like MAGA stronghold as compared to other Republican states?
Oh, Alabama is based, Nick. Yeah. We are based. My people love Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, Alabama loves the president.
Yeah.
And the president, and that's unusual. I mean, if you think about Donald J. Trump, right, and how most wealthy Republicans present themselves, Mitt Romney was always trying to hide the fact that he was insanely wealthy.
Yeah.
Right? And sheepish about it. And so he was trying to, like him in a pair of blue jeans is just about the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And he just looked uncomfortable. And the most comfortable I ever saw him was at the Al Smith dinner, where he was white tie, and he said something. He made a joke about himself. It was like, well, finally, I can relax. He was in his, he was in his element. But Trump has never apologized for being rich.
Yeah,
and you'd think that I mean, I'm sure every political consultant on earth would say to him, like, hey, tone it down when you go to rural Alabama or rural Idaho or whatever. Like, don't look rich. Don't talk about the gold fixtures
in the
at Mar-a-Lago and right. And he is just who he is. He's authentic. And the people of Alabama, I think, respect that. But he also has a great deal of what is highly valued in Alabama, and that's just common sense. Mm-hmm. And the president just has straightforward common sense, and he speaks plainly. And that's the people love him for that.
Yeah. We were talking about some of these, members of both the House and the Senate who can't wait, for the president to be gone. And one of their big arguments, in a lot of these very conservative states, as to why these constituents need to send members of the House and Senate, to go support Ukraine at all costs, is because they say it will rebuild our industrial capacity. We will be able to make all these factories so we can make missiles and bombs and tanks and that sort of thing for Ukraine, which I think is really sick, twisted, demented, however you want to describe it. But do you think that's actually how it works?
Well, I mean, that's how they hope it works, but that's not how the defense industrial base works. One of the things that I I co-wrote a paper on the defense industrial base with Secretary Wilkie for America First Policy Institute. And one of the distinctions we made there in the industrial base is there's no daylight between the defense industrial base and the industrial base. You think about World War II, how we converted our industry here in this country to war munitions. General Motors built tank engines, Ford built airplanes, Packard Motor Car built Merlin aircraft engine. We converted our civilian consumer products division to make military apparatus and materiel. Now, the past 50 years, my entire lifetime, politicians in Washington have been chasing manufacturing offshore for arbitrage purposes. So they've said, and I'm sorry, I'm an MBA, so I talk in business terms, but for cheap labor.
Yeah.
For cheap labor. They've just said, okay, it's okay. Like the steel mills in my hometown of Birmingham, Alabama, the last steel mill was shut down in 1972. And they said, the Japanese ate our lunch. And they said, it's okay. We'll buy cheaper steel from the Japanese, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then textiles, we made the whole state of Alabama there was a textile factory in every small town. And the Koreans took most of that. And the politicians said, it's okay. Go into the service industry, learn a new skill. No problem. And they just kept doing that over and over and over across America. The Rust Belt is called the Rust Belt for a reason, right? We gutted America's factories, and we were told that would make China somehow a democracy if we gave them all of our manufacturing. We allowed them to take all of our manufacturing. And it's really hard to you could turn a car mechanic at Ford in 1941 into a tank mechanic.
Yeah,
pretty easily. Same skill set. It's really hard to take a YouTuber and make him a welder, right? So if the balloon goes up, as we say in the military, and we've got to mobilize the whole country to manufacturing again, we can't do that. We just cannot do that at scale. So what we've done in Ukraine is we've given away our stocks. And this is what people don't understand, is that we do not make, we're not making these critical weapons nearly as fast as Ukraine is burning them. Mm-hmm. So we're critically low. And I'm not going to get into classified numbers, but we are critically low, below congressionally mandated numbers on almost every major armament, on javelins, on stingers, on tomahawks, on all of our missiles, on ATACMS, and we've given them away. And a lot of think tank people are like, oh, that's great. We'll just up production. Really?
Yeah.
What we did in the 90s is we cut all production. So we went from 30 prime manufacturers. That is just a fancy Pentagon speak for big manufacturers like Lockheed Martin. We went from big manufacturers, 30 of them, down to 5. Mm-hmm. And now we're in a monopoly situation, which defies all economics. So if your house is on fire, you can't very well call an ambulance to put it out, right? You have to call the fire department. Whatever the fire department charges, that's what you're going to pay them. So if we need more, we need more javelins. Well, there's only one company that makes them.
Yeah.
They're not 2 lines of javelins. It's in Troy, Alabama, by the way. Great place. But it's a terrible bind we've put ourselves in. We've given away 20 years of manufactured items in the past 2. And it's going to take us a decade or more to replace them all.
Right. Yeah. So I think a lot of, we call them, the word that we use at American Moment is policy gnomes. What a lot
What's
of
that mean?
Dorks, basically.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
It's a very
you
polite
mean
way.
nerds. Okay.
Yeah, it's a polite way of saying dorks.
Yeah.
A lot of policy people who've read a lot of very interesting papers and have gone to the right schools and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Think that you can solve the reindustrialization crisis by tweaking policy at the margins, right? Like they say, we give this tax credit here and we do this little thing. And then all of a sudden, boom, we've reindustrialized. Mm. How do you actually think about bringing a lot of these jobs, which by the way, my grandfather raised a lot of kids manufacturing cement culverts for 50 years.
Yeah.
And by the time my dad graduated from high school, that company was gone. And the only option he had was to join the Marine Corps. enlisted at 17 years old, brought the recruiter home so my grandma could sign off on the paperwork. So like, how do you bring jobs like that where people can provide for families?
Well, manufacturing jobs are great jobs. And I said this in my kickoff speech. I kicked off my campaign under the second largest statue in the United States, Vulcan, who's the god of the forge, made out of cast iron. He's in Birmingham, Alabama. Come visit him, 182 feet tall. He's really cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah, he's the god of the forge because Birmingham was an industrial town. We don't make anything anymore, but we once did. And I kicked off the campaign speech. And one of the things that I really feel passionate about is just what you said. It's your generation has been robbed of opportunity by us chasing these jobs overseas. And I say we chased them out. We really did chase them out. It made Wall Street rich, but in impoverished Main Street. So by way of example, I am one of those gnomes you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give you a nerdy example. But in 1980, the average household salary was $17,000. A household. And there was only one person working in the household in 1980. And the average house cost $47,000. So 2.7 times household income. Today, the average household income is $83,000. That's with two people working. And the average house is $420,000 or 5x the salary. 5 times the salary. So young people are saying, like, I can't ever afford a house. Where am I ever going to make this kind of money? A lot of them, workforce participation in Alabama. Alabama is dead last in workforce participation because they don't feel motivated to go get a job that pays, squat minimum wage, right? Working in a menial job. And we've given away. Manufacturing pays really well. Now we're changing that in Alabama. And I'll give you one policy prescription for it. This came up when I was at Forbes. So again, here's where journalism overlaps policy. But in the 90s, Alabama gave the largest tax break in the United States to Mercedes-Benz. Largest tax break in history for a state to give a private company. It was I'm using round numbers, $250 million tax break. And I'll never forget the headline in like the Wall Street Journal, Barron's, Fortune, Forbes, everybody said, Alabama, a state first in little but football, gives the largest tax break in history, corporate history, to Mercedes, a luxury car manufacturer. And I went into Forbes and I said, this is a great idea. They should do this. And I had a long argument with the editor of Forbes about it, and eventually won the argument based on this: aren't lower tax rates better for all? Don't we believe in that as conservatives? Yeah. So Forbes was one of the few magazines that actually had a positive spin on that.
Interesting.
And then you can go back and look it up. Morgan Murphy. That was probably 1998. Today, would you like to guess what Mercedes-Benz and its associated suppliers in the state of Alabama, just Mercedes? Now we've got Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, ThyssenKrupp, Boeing, not Boeing, Airbus. Like, we've got a ton of manufacturing that has flowed into the state since then, but just Mercedes and their suppliers. Would you like to guess what the annual tax revenue is from that?
I have no idea.
$890 million a year. A year. Wow. So that investment pays almost quadruple back to the state every single year, and it's growing. And those jobs in Vance, Alabama, the factory workers there putting together the Mercedes M-Class in Vance, Alabama, make a huge living. And they can afford houses, and they can afford to have one person in the house that works.
Yeah. And so it's turned into like a nice community.
Yeah, it's turned into a really nice community. And so all over Alabama is converting back to a manufacturing base. We're building ships. We're building Huntsville is the factory floor of the defense industrial base. So if it's a missile, if it flies and is lethal and kills people, it's probably made in Huntsville. So all of the major primes are in Huntsville doing a bang up job there, literally. And it's bringing great jobs and a high employment rate and a good quality of life to people. And that's the way. And I want to help the rest of the country get to that, because we need the rest of the country. We need Texas, and Texas is doing a great job too, but we need the Rust Belt to get less rusty.
Yeah. When it's very important to, like, this seems like, normal common sense, but like, care about the livelihoods of the people who vote for you, seems like that's important. And another area where this has been, very critical is on the issue of immigration.
Mhm.
You've had a lot of Republican senators, members of the House who have been very pro, quasi, some version of like legal open borders, like anybody, who wants to come here. We're a great melting pot. We're all of these things. And, I think it's very tempting to look at a lot of these videos on social media and you see, even some of these like protests in Portland where they're attacking ICE officers and that sort of thing, like just thinking of it as an urban problem. This only happens in blue states or blue cities or whatever. Being, from a red state, does, the open border policies that we had under the Biden administration, is that negatively impacted Alabama, you would say?
Oh, hugely negatively impacted. And we don't know who's in our country.
Yeah.
Biden let in, and Mayorkas let in 20 million people on the high end that they had no idea who they are. Let them into our country, let them overrun our system. And it's a huge burden on, who it really cheated the most is legal immigrants who came here. It really cheated them and it gave immigration a bad name. And we've got to neck down immigration hugely because we don't know, we're overtaxed. We don't have the resources to handle it. They've been a burden to, legal immigration has been a burden to housing, for example. That's why one of the reasons why housing is so expensive. It's just simply demand. When you flood a nation with 20 million extra people, you've got to put them somewhere. Inflation, it was a huge driver of inflation. It's our schools, when people complain there's 30 kids in their child's class, and half of them don't speak English, and the teacher is having to spend more time with the kids that need that extra help.
Right.
Our voting security, if you care about voting security, there are a lot of states that don't require an ID. As you know, Alabama's one that does, thank goodness, but election integrity. And your voice, though, even if your state does, like Alabama, have ID laws, the illegal immigration population is giving more weight in the Electoral College to states that look the other way and just want to count those folks in the census and give themselves an extra seat in Congress or 2 or 5. And it cheats the people who do it the right way. So it absolutely affects the people of Alabama. It affects the people of West Virginia, even if the greatest brunt of illegal immigrants hit Texas, for instance.
Well, on the legal immigration side as well, there has been, in the same sense that a lot of companies have outsourced production and labor to foreign countries, there's also been a similar movement to do so in the United States with legal immigration, with workers who are willing to work for a lot less, and so on. And that also has a negative impact on states like Alabama.
Yeah.
Right?
I often say that communism exists 3 places on earth: Red China, Cuba, and the U.S. Department of State. Yeah. And they are deliberately obtuse in our visa status, our immigration policy. It's really complicated. It has lots of letters and numbers and initials so that the average American doesn't understand it. And it hasn't been revamped in decades, and it needs to be revamped. We don't need to have HB1 visas for people to come over and take a $90,000 manager at McDonald's job. We just don't need to do that. And we need to have a very serious conversation about it. There are forces within our party, Nick, that would make this country look like Uganda if it brought down labor rates. They just don't care.
Right.
And I meet them on the campaign trail. They're potential donors. They're wealthy individuals that are notionally Republican. And they say, well, no, this immigration issue, I don't know, Morgan. I got a lot of illegals that work for me, and they're great people. And they are. I have no doubt. I'm not demonizing anyone, right? There's a lot of reasons. I understand the impetus for an individual to come here legally and get a better life for themselves. The United States is a better life for most people. There's a reason why that is. But your first action upon getting here can't be to break our laws.
Right.
It just can't be. And the people that support that oftentimes are, let's call a spade, profiting from illegal immigrants.
Yep.
It's cheaper to them, right? They work hard. They prosper from illegal workforce, but they don't see the hidden costs. They don't see the extra child in the classroom. They don't see the welfare. They don't see the chain migration. That's another thing that happens even under legal immigration. So I've studied this really hard. And when you look at where we should go, I believe in legal immigration is we don't need to take low-skilled workers, period, full stop.
Mm-hmm.
They're a drag on the economy.
Yeah.
They're a drag on our treasury. And the problem is, for every green card we give out as a nation, 3.5 more people come in with that green card holder.
Yep. Chain
migration.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so expensive. And that's what we've got to re-examine as a nation.
No, a lot of these CEOs and those sorts of people profit from illegal aliens to the detriment of the rest of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a really good word. Well, really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Where can people find you on X.com, website, all of that stuff?
On all social media, my handle is Morgan W.W. Murphy.
Okay.
So on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, come follow me along there. I appreciate that. You come see a battleship video. There's very few, I think, candidates who've launched their bid in front of a battleship. I launched in front of the USS Alabama. And then you can come follow the campaign on murphyforsenate.com.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Thank you for tuning in to another fantastic episode of Moment of Truth. And thanks to Morgan for making some time away from the campaign trail to come visit our studio here in Washington, D.C. and record an episode on this little podcast that for some reason many of you have listened to over 200 episodes of. So thank you to Morgan and his team for making that happen. And thank you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you back here next week for another episode of Moment of Truth. Moment of Truth is an American Moment podcast taped at the Conservative Partnership Campus Studios and is produced by Jake Mercier and Hunter Smith, with original graphics and title cards by Jared Cummings. Our intro song is A Minor Struggle by Ryan Serenich, and our website is AmericanMoment.org.